For the better part of the last decade, LG and Samsung competed directly to make the best Android flagship, and for many years they traded blows in doing so. But in recent years, the gap between them seems to have grown, as LG starts making these odd decisions each year and Samsung continues making more traditional flagships. When it was released earlier this year, the LG V60 directly competed with the Galaxy S20 line, although at a lower price point with some quirks. Now, should you consider the LG V60 over the Galaxy S series or other Samsung and OnePlus phones? Let's talk about it. This is NOISO and this is the LG V60 review. One of the biggest features of the LG V60 is the ability to drop it into a case and instantly add a second screen. Like I did in my Surface Duo review, I'll start out by reviewing this phone as a standalone device, and then I'll review it in its dual screen case. So let's get started with reviewing it just as a phone. So one major theme that I found while reviewing the LG V60 is LG seems to have missed the memo on many different trends that are happening across Android devices this year. And that starts with the design. I personally like the navy blue and bronze color palette of my LG V60, but it is a little bit more boring than some of the flashier color palettes of newer phones. It also has squared edges and a flatter front panel, as compared to the sharper edges and curved glass that I've gotten used to on Samsung phones this year. In terms of size, the LG V60 is a brick. It's about the same footprint as the Note 20 Ultra, but a significantly smaller screen. And I do feel that I can hold on to it tighter because of those flat edges, and I don't accidentally touch the edges of the screen, but it does feel very heavy and bulky in my hand. Unlike Samsung, LG has been able to keep the size of the camera bump to a minimum, so it's almost non-existent as compared to some of the larger camera bumps that we've seen from the Note Ultra series this year. All in, I find the design to be nice, even if it's a little bit too large to hold comfortably in a single hand, and I really need to use two hands to use this phone. LG also missed the memo that we are removing headphone jacks, but that is actually a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. Personally, I've switched to Bluetooth headphones for most purposes, but when my Bluetooth headphones were not around or out of battery, I did find it was nice to just be able to plug in headphones. LG is also breaking the trend on several fronts with the screen, with the first one being the notch. Now, most Android manufacturers have switched to a hole punch cutout, rather than the teardrop notch that we saw on last year's phones. And the V60's notch is not too offensive, but in combination with the size of the bezels, quite large, I do find that this phone looks a little bit like a last generation or a 2019 phone, relative to the more modern designs that we've seen this year. Perhaps the biggest error this year is the fact that the V60 only has a 60Hz 1080p display. And personally, I've said in the past that I don't really care too much about high refresh rate displays because I can't distinguish them very easily, but it is notable that other Android flagships are offering 90 or 120 Hz for even comparable price points, so it seems to be a little bit of a miss with the LG V60. Outside of this, I found that the LG V60's 1080p screen to be good enough for most use, while it's bright enough, colors are good enough, and it's sharp enough for me. I've never been particularly impressed with LG's software in the past, but I have always added a launcher to deal with my frustration. Now, in recent years, it's a little bit tougher to have a launcher cover up your problems because of incompatibility issues. And I found that, unfortunately, the launcher really didn't solve my problems here, and so I defaulted back to the stock launcher on the LG V60. And I have a lot of problems with it. The most notable of the problems is the fact that you can't actually switch the horizontal app drawer to a vertical app drawer, which I also have this problem on Samsung phones. But what's even worse with the LG V60 is that you cannot set the app drawer to auto sort itself, and instead, every single time you have to set it to sort alphabetically if, like me, you prefer an alphabetical layout. So the result for me is I often had a lot of gaps in the middle of my app drawer from apps that I had uninstalled, and a lot of new installed apps that automatically dropped to the end despite me trying to sort them alphabetically. This led to many frustrations during my review, and it forced me to more often just search for the app that I was looking for rather than trying to sort through the pages and find where it showed up. It doesn't help that most of LG's phones are sold via a carrier, and so the combination of carrier bloatware and default LG bloatware has led for many of those applications that I have to dig through to be just bloat or poor games that I'm never going to use. And then let's talk about the camera. While LG's camera layout is similar to many other flagship smartphones we've seen this year, with a standard lens, a wide-angle lens, and a telephoto lens, it doesn't have any of the extra perks that you might get on a high-end Samsung flagship with a 5x zoom or anything weird like that. It seemed to be just a few short years ago that LG was consistently in competition for the best Android cameras, but they seem to have fallen off recently. Now, I do think you can get good pictures out of the LG V60, but they're a little bit less consistent. And what I found, the biggest frustration that I have with pictures from the LG V60 is they quite often look quite a bit flatter than a Samsung or an iPhone image. An example is this picture that I took of this field in front of the mountains. To my eyes, this scene was much more colorful, with reds and greens and purples, and the LG just made it so bland. Portrait mode and night mode also fell short, as seen in this picture of a palm tree as compared to the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. In addition to the photo quality, I found that there were a couple of quirks that I had while using the LG V60's camera app. The first of all being, when you take a picture, it automatically starts optimizing the picture you just took and freezes the camera app so you cannot use it to take another picture. And most phones instead do the processing in the background, and so you can still continue to take pictures. And I really prefer that because more times than not, when I'm taking a picture of a person, I will take several pictures to make sure that their smile is great or they didn't blink, rather than taking a picture, waiting for it to optimize, and then taking another picture. And another spot where LG seemed to miss the trend is the fact that double pressing the power button does not jump to the camera like it does on Samsung, OnePlus, and other phones. Instead, you have to double press the volume down key. And while this usually is just as fast of a shortcut, I quite often am taking walks and listening to podcasts, and double clicking the volume down key turns down volume. It doesn't open up the camera app. So then instead I have to just power on the phone and then swipe up on the camera icon in the lock screen to get to the camera app. It's a small gripe, but it just added a few seconds of frustration to every single time I tried to use the camera on this. Of course, what really sets the LG V60 apart is the ability to drop it into its dual screen case and instantly add a second screen. Now, I found the actual experience of doing this a little clunky at times because it's not as easy to peel it out as I want it to be, and it feels like I'm going to break the plastic on the top panel. The case adds a lot of heft to the LG V60, such that what was an already heavy phone is now quite difficult to hold in one hand for any extended period of time. Now, interestingly enough, I did actually keep the V60 in its case for the first half of the review because I found that it didn't actually add enough weight to this point where I didn't want to use the phone, and I didn't enjoy the fact that I did have an additional screen as an option. Now, for the most part, just like in my Surface Duo review, I found that really I just used that dual screen for occasionally watching some YouTube video while texting someone or browsing Twitter. And outside of that, I didn't find there were many times where I'd run apps on both screens and use them actively, although that is an option with this, just like it was with the Surface Duo. Another application that I had for the dual screen was sitting it on a table or a wireless charger and propping up the screen almost like a laptop and watching a video on the screen like a little kickstand. But outside of a couple of applications, I didn't find that my productivity was significantly higher because I had this dual screen availability. Now, with a few applications, you can span apps across the display, but like I said in my comparison with the Surface Duo, this gap is quite large, and so the experience of doing that is not great. Now, I have watched YouTube videos across both displays, but I really would prefer just watching it on a single display instead. Many carriers and stores actually included the second screen when selling the LG V60, which means a lot of people thankfully got to experience what it's like to have a dual screen phone. So if we're keeping score, LG has a headphone jack, a notch, only a 60 Hz display, questionable camera performance and questionable software, and a dual screen accessory. Now, what does that all add up to? At the original $899 price point, I think the LG V60 does fall short for me. In my mind, it's large, unpolished, and really not on par with some of the other Android flagships this year. but due to deals and depreciation, you might be able to find the LG V60 for a significantly discounted price. And it might be one of the cheaper, if not cheapest, options to get a Snapdragon 865 flagship Android phone. In my mind, the LG V60 does make for a relatively good flagship experience if you're willing to deal with the lower 60 Hz refresh rate. But I think the dual screen capabilities of the LG V60 are largely underdeveloped, and I really want LG to explore making a more truly dual screen device. If only. Thank you for watching NOISO. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe because we've got some super exciting content coming up real soon. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what you think of the LG V60 and its dual screen, and I'll catch you in the next one.